speaker, the winner of Oersted Medal, the highest award of American Association of Physics Teachers. And I think I'm sure that this is one of the best teachers in the United States, especially in modern physics. So I'm very glad that we have here such a great opportunity to see, to listen and to watch this great lecture about hands and minds at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. So maybe you saw outline of the lecture, so it's your turn, and when you can tell us your lecture. So
thank you very much. Before we begin, I will be mentioning a book called Exploring Black Holes. I wrote the first edition with John Archibald Wheeler, and we are now working on the second edition. There are about 10 pamphlets that describe it, but you may or may not be interested in that. It is another lecture that I gave here a few days ago. And that other lecture in both Slovak and Hungarian is available as well as in English on the eftaylor.com/teach. I knew nothing about this conference except its name, Hands-on Science, and of course I immediately thought of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which is mind and hand. And here we have the mind, and here we have a hammer and what you beat the hammer with, and here it says science and arts. By arts we don't mean art, we do not mean Picasso, we mean engineering. And so this seems a perfect way to begin. The trouble is, in a couple of years, I will have been at MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, for 50 years. I do not understand the Massachusetts Institute of Technology at all. There are several reasons for that. It changes every 2 months. There is something important that changes about it. And every year, there is something serious that changes about it. And every 5 years, it is fundamentally changed, except for the fight between those who want pure research and applied research. That always goes on forever. So I cannot tell you about the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, partly because tomorrow it will be different, and partly because I do not understand it. It pretends to be the best technical school in the world. Is it? I have no idea. There's one in Tel Aviv, which is pretty good. I'm sure there's one in Jordan. So we have to leave that to one side. But in any event, it's a good place. They change all the time. And how am I to describe something that will be useful to you? What I always do is be selfish. There are things about MIT which I don't know that I would like to find out about. And so this is what I did with my talk. I found out about things at MIT that I had never heard of before, but I'd heard just a little, so I tried to do it. And the way I learn things is to write them down and send them to Joseph Hunch, and he says, I don't understand that at all. And I said, of course you don't, because I didn't say it right. And so we do it over, and that's what's going to happen with this talk. So the outline is I'm going to show you 2 projects. There are many projects, but these are the 2 that I found interesting. And then there is MIT's most famous course, which is a robot competition. And then we're going to say that physics is far wider. It deals with many more things than you can get your hands on directly. And how do you bring all those things, the universe as a whole, the nucleus, the atom, how do you bring them in so that you can get your hands on them? And we will talk about various ways that you might. So the first project I'm going to talk about is one that is, many of these are in the mechanical engineering department. One of these is by Susan Murcott, and her job, her task, her project is to provide pure water for different, we say, emerging nations. That is, nations that cannot spend as much money on water, for example, as we can. So here is dirty water, and here is a filter, and here is clean water. Is it clean? Can you drink it? That's the question. The Boston, Massachusetts, where I live, just spent $5,000 million setting up a new sewer system and a new water system. That's that's for 2.5 million people, and that's $2,000 a person. My family had 5 people in it, 3 children and two adults. That's $10,000. We can spend that money, and we have a terrible high water bill as a result. But you cannot do that in Ghana. You cannot do that in Nepal. And you cannot do that in the Dominican Republic. So I'm going to take one case, and that is Ghana, and how they arrange things so each family can have its own water supply. So here is the clean water, here is the dirty water, and these are children that may or may not die because they have clean water rather than dirty water. And this is a program. Once you get good at this, they will set up a master's degree program so that students can help you do these in various projects. And these are students and local people who work on these filter projects. And the acronym is WASH, Water, Sanitation, and Hygiene. What's important, what you do with sewage, and how you get clean water. And this is in Ghana. Well, they found local materials, and they make a clay filter. They don't bake it, they dry it. And here is the machine that they have created to make these filters. But you have to find local materials. You go in, each different country is different. And in this case, there are 2 kinds of clay. 2 kinds of clay, and they found that rice husks, that's what's left over when you take the rice. That's what's left. And the flow rate, here it is dripping, see? The flow rate is 5 liters per hour. The bacteria removed is 99.7. And the turbidity is junk, the thing that makes it cloudy. And that's reduced by 92%. They also paint the inside with silver, colloidal silver, which kills the germs. And that's all decided locally. And the rules they have for each such project is you use local materials. You go in and say, what local materials can we use? And you always follow local custom. You go to the elders, you get permission, you go to the villages. You do not come in as an outsider and violate their rules, except it turns out that you want to get the women to find the raw material once you know what it is, and they do the processing, and they set up the filter production, and they do the distribution, and they do the training, and they do the management. So the women become more important, but the men don't care as long as they have clean water. So you sneak in. We say we fly in under the radar. So this is where they've done these similar projects. Each one is different. Each one is a master's thesis for some student. Each piece of each project is a master's thesis. They do it in Brazil and the Caribbean and the Dominican Republic and Ghana and Haiti and Honduras and Kenya and Nepal and Nicaragua and Peru and the Philippines and Rwanda. They're all different. I think I saw a piece for Nepal where you have water that is clean but is not sanitary. You put it in a bottle like this and you leave it in the sun. After one day, it is sanitary. The germs are gone and you can drink it. Each place is different. And her summary is, we have created diverse, multicultural, multi-religious, multinational teams of men and women working cooperatively and in peace. So that's one project. And you say, I want to know more? Well, you go online. There's a 15-minute YouTube talk about it. Now I go to the next project, done by Amos Winter, also mechanical engineering. It is a lever wheelchair. In the developing world, there are 20 million people who need a wheelchair, but an ordinary wheelchair doesn't work. And 70% of them live in rural areas, that is, not in small villages. And the existing ones they have are no good. The wheelchairs are difficult to push, propel, make go on rough surfaces. And the tricycles, here's a tricycle, 3 wheels, they are too big to use in the home. So you have a simple problem with a complicated answer. So the goal is a wheelchair that you can run over rough ground that will cost less than $200, that a bicycle repair shop can repair, and that is made in which they try it over and over again. They show the first ones, and there's no good. I'm going to show you one that didn't work at all. And they do it over and over again. The users are fully involved. That's the publication. If it doesn't work, if the users say this is terrible, then it's terrible, and you do it again. And inside the house, it has to become a regular wheelchair. So you take the levers off and you put them in the wheelchair, and now you can do what you and I do if we have a wheelchair in a house. So here's his first design. It was terrible. It didn't work. Many things are wrong with it. It is too heavy. It is too wide. There's no head support. It's a bad position for pushing. You want to be able to push. So they did it over and over, and I will not show you all the intermediate ones. But here's what you need. You need a lever, and you know what a lever is. If you have a lot of leverage, you can hold it high, and if you're going on a smooth surface, you hold it low. The brain of the machine is the user. The user knows what he needs. Is he going through grass? Is he going down a smooth surface? And of course, there's a lot of science now. You've got engineering. And when I showed this to one of my friends, he said, that's a terrible vector diagram. We would not let a freshman get away with that diagram. Well, never mind. This is mechanical engineers. They don't know about vector diagrams. But they have a formula, and they work away at it. And so they achieve the goal. And what's the goal? The goal is a single mobility aid that can fulfill the needs of people with disabilities. It's capable of long distance. They can go 5 kilometers a day on this thing through grass and on paths. And it's small and mobile, and it can be repaired in a bicycle shop. And it costs less than $200. Well, $200 is a lot of money, but if it's the difference between you being able to do your job and not do your job, it's worth it. This is a man who fell out of a tree, and he had a shop that he had 1.5 kilometers away. He had to give up his work, but once he got this chair again, he could go back to work and support his family and produce the things that his shop produces. Now, this is a complicated diagram, but here's the chair, and here's the innovation, which means you have an idea, then a validation, you try it out. Commercialization, you sooner or later have to have a bicycle company make those things, and dissemination, which means distribution. And here are some of the companies that do this, and the outer one says, what does it say here? Well, you can read it. The point is you have to produce it, you have to transfer the technology, you have to manufacture it, you have to find some way to get the money to distribute it, and here's the end users. So this is a wheel that's too small for you to see, but you see the process. Oops. Now, of course, if you are disabled in the United States or in Slovakia, you will probably pay $5,000 or $6,000 for a good wheelchair. Well, they can make you one for $1,500. And for the developing, and here's the one for you and me, and here's the one for the developing world. And this is $200, and that one is $1,500, so all of us save money. So here's the lessons. We start with apparently conventional needs. You need a wheelchair for these people. You span the science. You combine advanced science with simple on-the-ground machinery. You repeat the trials over and over again, and the users tell you it's no good. And when they're finally happy, then you have something useful. And you consult all the stakeholders, the users, the village elders, the manufacturers, the distributors, the people who help underdeveloped countries, and all of these people have to work together so that you can produce the 20 million wheelchairs you need for the developing world. Now I want to talk about the most famous course at MIT, which some of you have heard of, and some of you have not. This has nothing to do with the third world. This is a course at MIT founded by Woody Flowers. It's called Introduction to Design. And the first day he says to the class, you go out to MIT and find me a terrible design. And you've got one in the bathroom here. You have to pull the towels down with a wet hand. That's very bad design. But we have those in the United States too. Well, and so then they spend the rest of the semester planning a robot competition. And see, this is black and white, and the robot has to do some things, and I will tell you about what sort of things the robot has to do. Every year it's different, but sometimes the robot has to work completely on its own, and sometimes you can use the controllers that your children use to make their television games work. So here is it's a popular public event. It's like a football game at MIT. All the alums come back, all the parents come back, all the students, and they cheer for the winner, just like you would a football game in a state university. And here's the winners. This is This is Woody Flowers, and this is the winner that year. Which year? I don't know. And now here's this one, May 9th, 2013, and this is Mechanical Engineer 2007. You know 007, you can kill people. That's Alliance, so that's a joke. So what's happened this is the MIT Beaver, the mascot, and he has medical problems, right? He has spare ribs, extra ribs, and the robot gets points for taking the ribs and putting them in a bio-waste hole, right? He has butterflies in his stomach. Well, the robot removes the butterflies for a certain set of points. But the most popular one was a wrench knee. Wrench means it twisted, right? But it's a literal wrench. And it picks up the wrench out of a hole, the robot, and puts it on a shelf, and you get so many points. Now, no robot does all of those things, and you have to design your robot deciding what you're going to do so that you will compete and get the greatest number of points. And here, everybody gets the same kit. Now, in addition to this kit, there's wheels and axles and a few other things, but everybody has to make his robot out of this kit. And here is the current professor, Daniel Fry, and you see he's dressed in his surgical blues with his, what do you call it, around the neck. And this is not my photo, it's someone else's photo. And here is my photo, and here's maybe 1/3 of the robots ready to go for the competition. And a pretty girl fixing hers. That doesn't hurt. And here is this May 2013 crowd. It's not as big as it used to be, but it's still a famous thing. The parents come, the fellow fraternity and sorority members come, and they cheer on the winner. And here is the final round after many eliminations. For the first time in history, it's 2 women. And there's parts I didn't tell you about. You try to interfere with the work of the robot of your competitor. So you push them out of the way in various ways. And here are the winners. This is the first prize, second prize. I don't know whether that's third or that's third, but it's third and fourth prize. And this was just a month and a half ago. So here's some other past robot competitions, and I tried to send an email to Woody Flowers to explain these, but he did not answer. So I'd have to make the best I can of it. There was Niagara Balls, which is like Niagara Falls, and you had to gather ping pong balls, and the more ping pong balls you could gather, the more points you got. Then there was a water waiter race. There was a glass of water that you had to move along without sloshing it. You had to get it from one place to the other, and someone else, the other robot, was trying to push you so you lose water. Then there was racquetball. You had to move a big ball into your opponent's end, and he had to try to push the ball back to yours. Then there was a close encounters of the remote kind. There were aluminum soda cans. You had to gather as many soda cans as you could. And there's a tech fair carnival. There's a carnival, a place where you go and you buy a ticket. You push a lever down, you buy a ticket, then you bang on a lever and it goes up and rings a bell, and several games like that. And finally, the Aztec god. You have a Aztec pyramid and you have to put a book on top and pull the snake over to your side. Well, if this isn't a complete description, I'm sorry. Woody Flowers did not answer my email. Yeah, maybe the robots will answer. So now I ask the question, what natural phenomenon can physics get its hands on? And the problem with physics is you can't get your hands on much of what it deals with. There's from the smaller than the nucleus, we have quarks, to the largest galaxy, from before the Big Bang to the ultimate fate of the universe. How are we going to bring that into our laboratories so we can get our hands on? And I'm going to talk, and here is now, this is a very interesting diagram from James Hartle. And here is 10 to the 0. Here's 10 squared. Here's 10 cubed, 10 to the 4th, 10 to the 6th, 10 to the 8th, 10 to the 10th. So you go up a factor of 100 just by moving over. And this is the size in meters. And this is the mass in kilograms. And here is the Milky Way. And here is the universe just at the end of inflation. Here's the universe where it is today. Here's the event horizon of the black hole in the Milky Way. Here's a neutron star, the sun, the earth, uranium atom, and hydrogen atom. Now, how are you going to get your hands on all that? Well, our French speaker yesterday told you part of it. You have a spectrum. Well, it took 50 or 100 years for us to understand a spectrum, and the modern spectrums are ask him about the comb spectrum. I don't understand the comb spectrum, but it allows you to do things with cosmology that are very advanced and very important. So this is a weird one. Here's a strand of DNA, which is about 1 centimeter long if you unroll it. So, but what I've done is to set limits here. The smallest mass is going to be, for me, a half-carat diamond at 1/10 of a gram. And the biggest weight is going to be the weight lift record. Now, there's different weight lift records for men and women and so forth, but roughly speaking, it's 250 kilograms. And when it comes to size, I'm going to have the smallest is the smallest stitch you make, which is 1/10 of a millimeter. And the biggest is a football field. For us, football has a different meaning than for you, but we both understand it's something like 100 meters. If you don't like that, you can make it 100 times as great, but it won't make this very big. It'll only move it from here to here. So this is the problem of physics. How are you going to bring the Milky Way into the laboratory so you can get your hands on it? And that's the second part of my talk. So if you're going to teach, you must bring them in so you can get your hands on. Now there's a bunch of ideas, and I'm going to tell you some of them, and I'm going to leave you to on your own for the rest. And we all know about thought experiments. I'm not going to say any more about that. You use it every day. There are people in this room who do a better job at that than I do. There's conserved quantities, and it can be entropy, or it can be energy, and it can be momentum. It can be angular momentum. I'm not going to talk about those things. You use it every day. I'm going to talk about 5 models, which I call analogies. Something is like something else. I'm going to talk about limiting cases. I'm going to talk about interactive displays. I'm going to talk about games and stories. All of these are ways that we can talk about these structures, the universe as a whole, or atoms and nuclei and quarks. So we start with first, an analogy. Things have to be similar but also different. People say, is an electron a wave or is it a particle? It's neither. It's like a wave, but it's not. It is not a wave. It is like a particle, but it is not a particle. And Richard Feynman got it right. Electrons behave like nothing you have ever seen before. They're screwy. Electron is nothing you can look at. It is like a wave. It is like a particle. And you try to piece together different pictures, an analogy. And I'm going to talk about a black hole because I'm writing a book about a black hole, so I've thought a lot about this. The black hole curves space-time radically, and once you get inside the event horizon, you never get out. And you make but I'm not going to talk about making measurements in general. I'm going to talk about always making a measurement on a flat patch, a local flat patch, where special relativity works. So, like space-time, a trampoline, here's a trampoline, is curved by mass. For small mass, the trampoline is linear. Twice the mass, twice the depression of the trampoline. But the trouble with space-time is it's not linear. And what happens is twice the mass adds also pressure. So you have twice the mass, you have an additional pressure. You have 1,000,000 times the mass, you have more than 1,000,000 times the attraction, and pressure is added to the mass. It's nonlinear, and so it results in a black hole. It's like a trampoline with it stretched out. Here is a rock, here is the circumference, here is, you might say, this is the radius. What's the radius? We don't know that anymore. Okay, now here's a river model of a black hole. Here's a fish that is just above a waterfall, and if the fish doesn't go too far over, it can get back. And the fastest fish is like light. It isn't light, but it's like light. And the fastest fish, swimming as hard as it possibly can, just stands still. And light, moving as fast as it can, just stands still at the event horizon. And if it gets inside, too bad, it's gone. It hits the bottom of the waterfall. Well, here it is on the other side. You have stretch, and as it falls down, it gets thinner. It compresses. We say that it spaghettifies. How do you die in the center of a black hole? You're stretched this way because your feet are closer to the attraction than your head, and you're being funneled into a narrower and narrower space. So you're spaghettified. How long does that take? Is it painful? Well, it could be painful, but no matter what, if we're talking about a non-spinning black hole, you're dead between the time you are uncomfortable until you're dead is 2/9 of a second. We'll say 3/10 of a second. I would love to die that way, because is there time for the pain signals to get to your head? I don't know, but it's very, very quick. And it doesn't matter how big the black hole is. It can be the smallest possible black hole, between 2 and 3 times the mass of the sun. Or if the one in the center of our galaxy is not rotating, which it probably is, if it were not rotating, it's also 2/9 of a second. So you can have a good time falling into a black hole. So this is an analogy. Now here's Slovakia. And I'll give this talk in Hungary. It'll be the same square. It'll be Hungary. In Slovakia, you buy a road map, and you can get to the city you want to get to. You don't make any mistakes. It's flat enough. So the road map is fine. You don't get lost because it's really curved. It's flat enough. And so that's the way we do our measurement as well. Slovakia is flat enough so the road map can be flat, and you still get to the city you want to get to. And here is a space shuttle, and these individual tiles are flat, but you put them together to make a curved surface. The same is true for, you have an inertial frame, it's local, it's flat, special relativity works, but you piece them together to describe curved space-time. Now I'm going to talk about limiting cases. If you go from 0 to the speed of light, general relativity becomes special relativity if it's flat. Special relativity becomes Newtonian mechanics at low speed in flat space-time. And the masses of the black hole, you can have any mass you want, from about 3 times the mass of our sun to billions of times the mass of our sun. So here's a range of speeds in science. Here is the maximum speed of continental drift. It's the same powers of 10. The maximum speed of the continental drift is 100 millimeters a year. The speed of human hair growing, well, it's roughly 15 centimeters a year. The speed of grass growing is about centimeters a week, and when you get home from this conference, it will be time to mow your lawn. The Galapagos tortoise, the last one alive, was named George. He just died. I'm sorry to tell you this. But he would walk at almost 1/10 of a meter per second. A human, as he walks, is 1.4 meters per second. The highway auto speed, roughly speaking, 100 kilometers an hour. The land speed record of a wheeled vehicle is about 1,200 kilometers an hour. The speed of the Earth in its orbits is 30,000 meters per second. The speed of the binary that causes what we think are gravity waves, their speed in orbit is 7.75 hours. The fastest cosmic ray was 3 times 10 to the 20th electron volts. If that is a proton, then the difference between the speed of that proton and the speed of light is 5 times 10 to the minus 24. It's as near to the speed of light as we have experienced. So this is a ladder. You go up and down this ladder. And now I want to talk about computer interactive displays. We have only one display that's used in this book. It's called GR Orbits, and it's by Slavo Tuleja, the best teacher in Europe, or some such thing. And he has a wonderful program, and you can choose over here. You choose the rate of spin of the black hole. Here is 0 for a non-spinning black hole. You choose the angular momentum of the stone or orbiting planet. You set various parameters here, and then you start, and it goes around. If it's only if you're far from a black hole, it will be an orbit that precesses, like Mercury. But do you call this precession? No, I don't call it an orbit at all. It's a flower-like design. And this allows students to get their hands on what the predictions are for Newtonian mechanics, for a planet or a stone, or if it's general relativity, trajectories of stones or planets, and light around both a non-spinning and a spinning black hole. You choose the spin. You choose the angular momentum, and it will tell you what's going to happen. It will plot the orbit. This is a marvelous single. It's the only piece of software we use to teach general relativity. Now I want to talk about games. When computers were first made, games was the big thing. You think Google is important. Games are much more important, and they have been from the beginning. And they continue to be the greatest use of personal computers. Maybe you don't know what your children are doing. The online adventure games should be, I think we can do online adventure games that show you what general relativity is. I can't do it, and we don't have enough money in the academic world to provide a really good game that shows you what it's like in special and general relativity, but we're working on it. And this allows the student to interact, you say, directly? Well, it's a game, right? But it allows him, it's like the holodeck on the Star Trek movies, right? You go in there, you pretend to be something else, and you're immersed in this world. And I think it's a wonderful potential, and I'm not going to do it. One of you has to do it. And here is a comment from Anant Agarwal of MIT. He's the president of edX, and if you don't know about MOOCs, we'll have a discussion about that. But this is, he says, students spend a lot more time on the course if it's a game. And moreover, they get instant feedback. You make a right correction, and your semester grade goes up by 1/100th of a point. Oh boy, I'll go back and make another correct thing. Then my semester grade goes up by another 1/100th of a point. Very motivating. And he says, if you have a virtual laboratory. I have a problem with laboratories that you ought to be able to do with your real hands. But if you're teaching 150,000 students, you can't set up these laboratories in Nepal and Timbuktu. So who's going to win? Will the block or the marble win? going down the inclined plane. And we have a famous person, Doc Edgerton. You have flashers on your ambulances and on your police cars. Many of these are Edgerton flashers. And he was a great professor for working with students. And he said the trick in education is not to let them know they're learning something until it's too late. Now I want to talk about stories, and this is my final one. The Bible is full of stories. I have a friend who's a specialist in the Quran, and I said, are there stories in the Quran? He says, no, but there are stories about Muhammad, the prophet. But in our Bible, it's full of stories, and that's the way we learn our religion. There was a time when there was nothing but stories. Religion, science, simple urgent communication, and poetry were fused together. Stories were the first repositories of human knowledge. They were as important to survival as a spear or a hoe. Without the story, you were not a member of the tribe and you died. So story was central even before there was science and before there was literature in the way we talk about it. And the major story of this book about a black hole, and it's hidden, the student, is thinking about it all. What is it like to fall into a black hole? What do you see? How long do you live? What is the last thing you see before you die? These are all interesting questions, but to answer them, you've got to talk about the motion of light and the motion of people that fall and the motion of people who are in orbit and the motion of people who are on the surface of the earth. All of these questions you have to answer before you can answer the question. That's really the story of this book. What is it like? And I have a surgeon who worked on my eyes, and he said, do I have to worry about falling into the black hole in the middle of the Milky Way? And I said, no, it's 30,000 light years away, and you don't need to worry. He said, phew, maybe he was kidding me. I mean, who knows? He's a smart person. So these are all questions. So looking back, good. I'm even on time. Looking back, MIT Mind in Hand, the students apply advanced engineering to the basic needs. How can we get our hands on the full range of physics? Well, there's a bunch of techniques. There are thought experiments, there are conserved quantities, there are models, there are limiting cases, there are interactive displays, there's games, and there's stories. And you will perhaps have other ideas about how we bring the remote systems that we talk about in physics into the classroom. This, I checked it this morning, and this talk, and also a talk about this black hole in Slovak and Hungarian and English, and some of the background material about working with John Wheeler are on this website. And you can choose to ignore it, or you can go and enjoy it, or you can take any intermediate one. There's also a video on YouTube about the Ghana Water Project. And there's a video on the lever wheelchair. They will teach you more than I told you, but maybe not as much as you want to know. And finally, for general relativity, this is the first edition of the book, which John Wheeler and I published in the year 2000. And there is GR Orbits by Slavomir Tuleya. And there's a free download of the draft of the ones we're working on, and we very much want your help. You say, that doesn't make any sense. Line 243 is stupid. And I will thank you for telling me it's stupid, because we want it so that everybody can understand it, because then when we're all done, I understand it. It's very simple and selfish, and it's me first. Thank you.
Question, please.
Come on, there's this question you want to ask, but you're afraid. Good.
Thank you very much for the beautiful presentation. I've been working on water projects for more than 10 years now, especially with primary school children. I'm really impressed by your suggestion on Ghana water project.
Yes.
I will have a look on this
And I'm sure Susan Murcott would be glad to. She's very open about this, and she's very interested in anything you can help with her with, and that she can help you with. I'm sure it will work fine. Yes. Well, that is your genius, and she has a different kind, and I'm sure you can work together. If you cannot get hold of Susan Murcott, you can send me an email. He knows my email, and I will tell her that you want to communicate with her. And I assume she's a very nice person. She's very busy. She's got a lot of students, but I'm sure she will talk with you.
Seems that there are no other questions. Maybe I have a short question. Now you are trying to finish this book. When do you expect to finish this book and publish about exploring black holes?
That's an embarrassing question, because what happens is we have a new idea. I'm working with the head of the physics department, and he knows the subject cold. And he can write beautifully. I mean, John Wheeler could write beautifully. But working together, we realize that the student doesn't understand this. And so we have a good idea, and some of the good ideas Jožo Hunch has helped us with, and Slavo Talea has helped us with. And there are somebody in Montreal, and there's somebody in Budapest. And we realize that we suddenly have a good idea, and that good idea is for this chapter. Well, it turns out it's good for the whole book. And so we spread it out. We would like very much to finish writing it at the end of the next summer, to 2014. But then there will be a year or two of production. You know how these things go. In the meantime, you can read all the chapters for free. And you can also tell us that it's a bunch of baloney and what you don't understand. And we will try. I mean, I may get 10 emails a day saying what's wrong with it, and I will try to answer them, but it will not always work. Well, the third edition, I'm 82 years old. If I get through the second edition, that's somebody else. And we put in our will that Bertschinger has the rights. So I assume there will be a third edition. And Bertschinger will find some young person like you, and they will rewrite it because they'll find what's wrong with our edition. But I will not worry about that by then.
Thank you very much again for my question.